Imagine standing on a tropical beach while a madman with slow-burning fuses woven into his beard points 6 loaded pistols directly at your chest. You are not a king or a naval admiral. You are just a regular British sailor who stepped onto the Caribbean island of Nassau in the year 1718. But instead of being executed on the spot, you are handed a wooden ballot box and asked to vote for your next boss. Welcome to the Caribbean, where a group of sea thieves built a surprisingly functional democratic government decades before the Founding Fathers wrote the American Constitution. But before our friend with the burning beard was running board meetings, this paradise was just an empty rock. To understand how heavily armed criminals accidentally invented modern voting rights, we have to rewind to the year 1713. The War of the Spanish Succession had just ended, leaving thousands of privateers suddenly out of work. Privateers were essentially legal pirates hired by nations like Britain to plunder enemy ships during wartime. Once peace was declared, European governments handed these brave sailors a firm handshake and absolutely no money. Unemployed, broke, and possessing a very specific skill set involving cannonballs, thousands of former Navy men faced a choice. They could either starve peacefully under royal rule or relocate to a neglected Caribbean island called New Providence and start stealing things for themselves. The city of Nassau on New Providence Island was a goldmine for unemployed seafarers. It had a shallow harbor that big naval warships could not enter without crashing, but smaller pirate sloops could navigate with ease. Even better, the British governor of the island had essentially abandoned his post, leaving behind a power vacuum. By 1715, over 500 pirates had moved in, outnumbering the local residents 10-1. They cleared out the dilapidated buildings, set up crude taverns, and took control of the harbor. Nassau was no longer an obscure colony. It was fast becoming the ultimate lawless playground, floating right in the middle of Spain and Britain's most valuable trade routes. Now, you might assume a city run by pirates would be pure chaotic anarchy, but these sailors had spent years suffering under the brutal tyranny of Navy captains who whipped men for minor mistakes and stole their earnings. So when the pirates took over Nassau, they did something shocking. They created a written constitution called the Pirate Code. Under this system, every crew member had an equal vote in major decisions, including where to sail and who should lead them. Captains were elected by majority rule and could be demoted instantly if they acted like bullies. They even invented a form of worker disability insurance, paying fixed compensations for lost eyes or limbs. By 1716, Nassau had grown into a self-proclaimed pirate republic managed by 2 main factions. On one side was Benjamin Hornigold, a veteran sailor who considered himself an honorable rogue. Hornigold insisted on a very strict rule. His crew would only attack Spanish and French ships, leaving British vessels completely untouched. On the other side was Henry Jennings, a wealthy, ruthless privateer who did not care whose flags were flying as long as the cargo was valuable. Despite their constant ideological arguments, both men agreed that Nassau needed order. They established an informal system of magistrates to settle disputes, prove ownership of goods, and keep total chaos off the streets. The democratic system was so real that even founders could not escape it. Hornigold's insistence on leaving British ships alone eventually infuriated his hungry crew. In 1716, his men held a formal vote on the quarterdeck and stripped Hornigold of his command. They elected an aggressive new leader instead, leaving Hornigold with just a small sloop. Among the men who witnessed this pure demonstration of workplace democracy was a tall, imposing pirate named Edward Teach, better known today as Blackbeard. Teach learned a valuable lesson that day. To rule pirates, you did not need royal blood or a title from a king. You just needed a terrifying brand strategy and the consent of your voters. Blackbeard took Nassau's democratic philosophy and paired it with elite psychological warfare. He tied slow-burning hemp fuses under his hat that emitted trails of thick black smoke around his face, making him look like a demon rising from hell. Ships surrendered to him without firing a single shot, because his reputation preceded him. Meanwhile, Nassau reached its glorious peak. Over 1,000 pirates lived on the island, operating a thriving local economy powered by stolen Spanish silver, fine silks, and endless barrels of rum. For a brief moment in history, a group of uneducated outlaws was running the most equal, diverse, and democratic society anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Back in London, King George I was not amused by a gang of democratic sea thieves casually destroying global commerce. The British Empire was losing millions of pounds, and merchant companies were begging for help. So the king devised a clever two-part plan. He appointed a hardened former privateer named Woodes Rogers as the new royal governor of the Bahamas. Rogers was dispatched to Nassau with a small fleet of warships and a powerful piece of paper called the King's Proclamation. This royal document offered a full, free pardon to any pirate who surrendered peacefully before September of 1718. Anyone who refused would be hunted down and hanged. When news of the royal pardon reached Nassau, the pirate republic split directly down the middle. Conservative pirates like Benjamin Hornigold saw a comfortable way out and eagerly accepted the king's mercy. Radical pirates like Blackbeard saw the pardon as a trap and swore to fight to the death. If you are enjoying this chaotic tale of democracy on the high seas, take a fast second to like and subscribe so you never miss another weird history story. Meanwhile, Woodes Rogers sailed his fleet directly into Nassau Harbor. Nassau was suddenly converted from a free republic into a high-stakes standoff between bitter former allies, with the fate of Caribbean piracy hanging in the balance. To prove his loyalty to the crown, Benjamin Hornigold did the ultimate unthinkable treason. He traded his pirate hat for a judge's gavel and became an official pirate hunter for Governor Rogers. Hornigold knew every secret hiding spot, every supply line, and every shortcut in the Bahamas. He spent the next year relentlessly hunting down his old friends and drinking buddies, dragging them back to Nassau to face trial. Meanwhile, Blackbeard slipped away to North Carolina, continuing his reign of terror until he was killed in a bloody hand-to-hand combat battle later that year. The United Pirate Brotherhood had completely fractured, turned against itself by royal strategy. By late 1718, Governor Rogers had firmly re-established British control over Nassau. He hanged 10 unrepentant pirate captains on the waterfront as a loud warning to anyone considering a career change. The Democratic Republic of Pirates was officially dead, lasting barely a decade, yet its legacy remained astonishing. Long before the American Revolution preached liberty and representation, a ragtag community of illiterate sailors had successfully built a society where leaders were elected, wealth was shared, and power was held by the majority. They proved that human beings naturally crave fairness, even when those human beings are literal bloodthirsty criminals. When you strip away the peg legs and eye patches, Nassau teaches us something fascinating about human nature today. People often assume that order and democracy require ancient institutions or elite politicians to exist. But history shows that whenever a system fails working-class people, those people will build their own rules from scratch. The pirates did not invent democracy because they read philosophical books in elite libraries. They invented it out of pure survival, because they knew that unchecked absolute power leads to cruelty and disaster. When given the chance, humans usually choose equality over tyranny, even if they have to fly a skull and crossbones flag to get it. So the next time you cast a vote in a modern election, remember to give a quiet nod of thanks to the sunburnt outlaws of the Caribbean. They were completely unhinged, undeniably dangerous, but surprisingly, centuries ahead of their time. What wild historical event should we turn into simple stick figures next? Drop your favorite weird history story in the comments right now, hit that like button, and subscribe with notifications turned on so you never miss another episode. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Keep learning, and try to refrain from declaring your neighborhood a sovereign democratic republic this weekend.